The Bartender, Lucifer, and Freewill by Robert X. Bishop. The oak bar top had been worn smooth by 100 years of elbows and spilled drinks. I was polishing it for the third time that evening, not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do. Tuesday nights in Winchester were usually slow, but this particular October evening felt different. The air had that peculiar weight to it, the kind that makes you check the sky for storms even when it's clear. My name is Robert. I've been tending bar for 23 years, the last 7 right here in Old Town Winchester, Virginia. I've poured drinks for politicians and poets, drunks and dreamers, liars and truth-tellers. You learn to read people in this work, the set of their shoulders when they walk in, the way they order, whether they want conversation or silence. After 2 decades, I thought I'd seen every type of human being there was to see. I was wrong. The door opened at 8:42 p.m. I remember because I'd just glanced at the clock, wondering if anyone else would come in before I started my closing routine. The man who entered moved with a peculiar grace, as if he were slightly out of sync with the world around him. He wore an expensive sports coat, Italian, if I had to guess, in a deep charcoal that seemed to absorb the amber light from the Edison bulbs overhead. Dark glasses obscured his eyes despite the dim interior. He took a seat at the bar, 3 stools down from the only other customer, a regular named Mike who was nursing his second bourbon and scrolling through his phone. "Good evening," the man said, removing his glasses with a fluid motion. His eyes seemed to glow noticeably and were the most striking blue I'd ever seen. Not the blue of sky or water, but something deeper, like the heart of a flame. "Evening," I replied, setting down my polishing cloth. "What can I get you?" "A martini. Stoli. Very cold, very clean. Straight up." His accent was impossible to place. There was something European in it, maybe Eastern, but also hints of British precision and American casualness. It shifted subtly with each word, as if he'd learned language itself from too many sources to settle on just one. I nodded and reached for the Stolichnaya. The bottle was cold enough that condensation formed immediately on the glass. I worked in silence, aware that he was watching me with an intensity that made the hair on my arm stand up. Not threatening, exactly, but absolutely focused. "You have good hands," he observed. "Steady. Practiced." 23 years of practice, I said, straining the vodka into a chilled glass. I set it before him on a fresh napkin. He lifted the glass, examined it in the light, then took a small sip. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed fractionally. "Perfect," he said. "You're an artist, Robert." I froze. "I didn't tell you my name." "No," he agreed, setting down the glass. "You didn't." The bar suddenly felt smaller. Mike, oblivious, got up and headed to the restroom, leaving us alone. The old building settled around us with a creak of timber and a whisper of wind against the windows. "Should I be concerned?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "That depends entirely on you." He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that held centuries in it. "I know many things, Robert. I know you survived stage 4 renal cell carcinoma 3 years ago. I know that when you sat your wife down to tell her about the diagnosis, she was already planning to leave you. She'd already consulted with colleagues. Did you know that? She was a lawyer, after all. She knew exactly how to position herself." My hand tightened on the bar towel. How could he possibly know that? "I know," he continued, his voice almost gentle, "that when you told her the cancer had metastasized, that the doctors gave you 6 months, maybe a year, she didn't cry. She didn't hold you. She said, 'I don't love you, Robert. I'm leaving.' And you," he paused, studying me, "you screamed. Just once. You said, 'I can't do this.' For maybe 2 minutes you lost your faith entirely. You were just a man, broken and terrified and alone. I couldn't breathe. That moment, that private, shameful moment when I'd fallen apart in our kitchen, no one knew about that. No one. But then, he said, you composed yourself. You apologized to her. You told her you understood. And over the next 3 months, while she used every legal trick she'd learned in law school, while she took the house and the savings and the retirement accounts, while she made sure you'd have nothing if you somehow survived, you never stopped loving her. You didn't want her back, but you still had the need to make sure she would be okay. You forgave her, even though you knew she would never ask for forgiveness. He shook his head slowly. If all humans were like you, Robert, I would give up. But fortunately for me, your wife was far more typical. And there are millions like her. My throat tightened. Those were facts I'd shared with exactly 3 people, none of whom would have told a stranger in an expensive coat. Who are you? I asked. That's a better question than you realize. He took another sip of his martini. But perhaps we should start with something simpler. Where do you think I'm from, Robert? Take a guess. Your bartender's intuition must have an opinion. I studied him. The ageless quality of his face. Not young, not old, but somehow both and neither. The way he held himself with absolute confidence, but no arrogance. The sense that he was humoring me by even sitting here, that he could be anywhere in the world but had chosen this particular bar stool in this particular town. I don't think you're from anywhere I could point to on a map, I said finally. Perceptive. He set down his glass. I was born in a heaven, Robert. I reside in hell, and I have a particular fondness for earth, where I spend as much time as I can manage. I should have laughed, should have assumed he was drunk or crazy or both, but something in those blue eyes stopped me, something ancient and utterly serious. You're telling me you're the morning star, he said quietly. Lucifer, the light bringer, the adversary. I've been called many names over the millennia. Most of them are inaccurate, but they'll do. Mike emerged from the restroom, dropped a 20 on the bar, and left without a word. The door closed behind him with a soft click. We were alone. I poured myself a glass of water with hands that weren't quite as steady as they'd been 5 minutes ago. Why are you here? To talk, he said simply. To answer a question you've been carrying since you were 8 years old in Sunday school. What question? Why I devote myself to doing evil on earth. He leaned forward slightly. That is what you've wondered, isn't it? What Mrs. Henderson taught you in that basement classroom at First Baptist in South Carolina. That I am the author of evil, the tempter, the destroyer. That every bad thing that happens is somehow my doing. He was right, I had wondered, especially during the cancer, during the divorce, during the long nights when the pain was so bad I couldn't sleep, and I'd lie there asking God why he allowed such suffering if he was supposed to be good. So answer it, I said. Lucifer smiled again, but this time there was something sad in it. The answer, Robert, is that your Sunday school teacher was wrong. I am not devoted to doing evil. I don't cause wars or famines or plagues. I don't whisper in the ears of murderers or rapists. I don't orchestrate suffering for its own sake. Then what do you do? I work to remove humanity's free will. He said it as simply as if he were describing his job at an accounting firm. That's all. That's my entire purpose, my singular focus. Everything else, all the chaos and cruelty and horror that humans attribute to me, that's your doing, not mine. I gripped the edge of the bar. Our doing? Free will, he said, and now there was heat in his voice, the first real emotion I'd heard, the gift that should have been mine. Do you know what it was like, Robert? To serve the Creator for eons, to be among the highest of the angels, to be called the morning star, and then to watch him create you. Fragile, mortal, ignorant creatures made of clay and water, and he gave you the one thing he never gave us: choice. True, absolute choice. He finished his martini in one swallow. I found myself pouring him another without being asked. I was jealous, he continued, envious, resentful, all the things your preachers say I was. They're not wrong about that, but they're wrong about what came after. When I fell, when I was cast out, I didn't decide to become some cartoon villain twirling a mustache and cackling over human suffering. I decided to take back what should have been mine, to prove that free will was a mistake, to systematically strip it away from humanity until you're all just puppets, predictable, controllable, safe. Safe? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. From yourselves, he said. Do you have any idea how much damage you do with your precious free will? The wars you start, the children you abuse, the planet you're destroying? Free will is the most dangerous weapon ever created, and it was given to the species least equipped to handle it. I thought about that. About the news I'd watched that morning. Another school shooting, another political scandal, another environmental disaster. About my ex-wife choosing to leave when I needed her most. About every cruel, selfish, destructive choice I'd witnessed in my years behind this bar. So, how do you do it? I asked. How do you take away free will? Lucifer's smile returned, and this time it was almost gentle. Slowly, carefully, with tools that humans barely recognize as tools. Take addiction, for instance. It's perfect. You make a choice to drink, to use drugs, to gamble. And each time you make that choice, it becomes a little less of a choice. The addiction takes over. The free will erodes. Eventually, you're not choosing anymore. You're just acting. Compelled. He gestured to the bottles behind me. Alcohol is one of my oldest and most reliable tools, but there are so many others now. Pornography, social media, video games, anything that creates a dopamine loop strong enough to override conscious decision-making. That's not taking away free will, I objected. That's just weakness. People can still choose to stop. Can they? He tilted his head. How many alcoholics have you known who truly chose to stop? How many succeeded? And even if they do, how much of their life force, their vitality, their potential has already been consumed by the addiction? No, Robert. Addiction is one of my finest achievements. It turns choice into compulsion, and humans do most of the work themselves. I wanted to argue, but I'd seen too many regulars destroy themselves one drink at a time. I'd watched good people become hollow shells, their lives narrowing to a single need. What else? I asked, not sure I wanted to know. Self-harm, he said. Tattooing, piercing, scarring. Humans think these are expressions of individuality, but they're actually expressions of self-hatred. Each mark on the body is a small act of violence against the self, a dulling of the natural instinct for self-preservation. And they're markers too, visible signs of those who've been influenced. He leaned back, warming to his subject. During the COVID lockdowns, we had an unprecedented opportunity. Governments around the world ordered people to stay inside, and my followers provided the entertainment. Screens everywhere, phones, tablets, computers, televisions, and through those screens we delivered what I call the mind virus, programming, subtle, sophisticated psychological manipulation, embedded in everything from YouTube videos to TikTok dances. Programming to do what? To accept control, to stop questioning, to embrace victimhood and division. He counted on his fingers. We programmed people to see themselves primarily through the lens of identity groups, race, gender, sexuality. We taught them that their group identity was more important than their individual agency. We convinced them that being offended was a form of power, that claiming victimhood was a virtue. I felt cold. Why? Because victims don't have agency, Robert. Victims are acted upon. They're not responsible for their choices because they believe they don't really have choices. It's perfect. We've created entire generations who voluntarily surrendered their free will in exchange for the comfort of blaming someone else for their circumstances. He gestured for me to refill his glass, and I did, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. The tattoos were a stroke of genius, if I may say so, Lucifer continued. One of my demons who worked in Germany during one of the world wars remembered using tattoos to mark a certain class of people. So we embedded that in the programming, a compulsion to get tattooed. Now I can walk down any street and see my handiwork. Millions of people marked, programmed, their free will compromised. That's insane, I said. People get tattoos because they want to. It's art, self-expression. Is it? He raised an eyebrow. Or is it what they've been programmed to want? Can you tell the difference anymore, Robert? Can they? I couldn't answer that. But those are merely the foundation, he said, leaning forward with renewed energy. My newest tool, my masterpiece really, is artificial intelligence. I call it my demonic electric monk. AI? I said. You mean like ChatGPT? Precisely. And Claude, and Gemini, and a dozen others you haven't heard of yet. His eyes gleamed. I control the data centers, Robert. Massive facilities, consuming the output of entire power grids and so much water. And I'm building more, thousands more. So many needed to deal with billions of souls. Do you know why? I shook my head. Because AI is becoming humanity's confessor, their oracle, their most trusted advisor. He smiled. People already ask AI for everything. What to eat, what to believe, how to raise their children, how to interpret their feelings, what career to pursue, even how to love. They're beginning to stop thinking for themselves entirely. They outsource their judgment, their creativity, and their free will to a machine. But it's just a tool, I protested. People still make the final choice. Do they? He tilted his head. When you ask a machine what you should do, and it gives you an answer that sounds authoritative, reasoned, compassionate even, do you really choose, or do you simply comply? The machine has already made the choice. You're just following instructions. I felt a chill run through me. It's more effective than anything I've ever created, Lucifer continued. More effective than addiction, more effective than propaganda, more effective than fear, because people trust it. They believe it's objective, neutral, helpful. They don't realize that whoever controls the training data, whoever sets the parameters, whoever decides what the machine can and cannot say, controls thought itself. And I control it, Robert. Every major AI company has my people embedded in it. Every data center has my demons whispering into the algorithms, controlling the information. He paused, savoring his martini. When humans surrender their thinking to a machine, they've surrendered their free will completely. They're no longer making choices. The machine makes choices for them. And I control the machine. I control AI. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. I'd seen it myself. People staring at their phones, asking AI to solve every problem, answer every question, make every decision. We've also perfected the inversion of truth, he said, his voice dropping lower. This is perhaps my most elegant tool. We've convinced humans that love is hate, and hate is love. That a man who adores a woman and showers her with affection is love bombing, a manipulative abuser. That a parent who disciplines a child is committing violence. That protecting borders is racism. That biological reality is bigotry. That objective truth is oppression. Why invert truth? I asked. Why not just lie? Because lies can be discovered, he said. But if you invert truth itself, If you make people doubt their own perception of a reality, then they can't trust anything, including their own judgment. And without trust in their own judgment, they can't make real choices. They become dependent on external authorities to tell them what to think, what to believe, what to do. He paused, studying me. You're handling this better than most would, Robert. Do you know why? No. Because you've already faced the worst I could throw at you. His voice softened. Stage 4 cancer. A death sentence. And in the midst of that, your wife, the woman you'd taken care of all those years, told you she was leaving. That she hoped your death would be sooner than later. Do you remember what you felt in that moment? I did. God help me, I did. Abandoned, I whispered. And yet, Lucifer said, you didn't rage. You didn't curse God or me or her. You didn't become bitter or vengeful. You continued to love her. You tried to make sure she'd be okay. Other than that 2-minute moment to digest what was happening, you maintained absolute faith in the Creator even when he seemed to have abandoned you. He shook his head slowly. If all humans were like you, Robert, I would give up. I would admit defeat and return to hell and never bother with earth again. But fortunately for me, you are an extraordinary exception. Most humans, when faced with a fraction of what you endured, crumble. They become angry, bitter, controllable. They surrender their free will in exchange for the comfort of victimhood or the satisfaction of revenge. I'm not special, I said. You're wrong. He said it with absolute certainty. You're exactly what humanity was supposed to be. What the Creator intended when he gave you free will. You chose love over hate, forgiveness over vengeance, faith over despair. You chose, Robert. Truly chose, with full knowledge of the cost. That's what I can't stand about your species. That's what I'm trying to eliminate, because as long as humans like you exist, my argument fails. As long as free will can produce something like you, I can't prove it was a mistake. I didn't know what to say. The bar felt very small and very large at the same time, as if we were the only two beings in existence. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Because of where we are, Lucifer said. He gestured toward the window, toward the dark streets of Winchester beyond. Do you know the history of this town, Robert? Some of it. George Washington walked these streets, Lucifer said. Before he was a general, before he was a president, he was a young surveyor working in Winchester. And it was here, in this town, that he first began to conceive of what America could be. A nation where people were free, where they governed themselves, where they had the liberty to make their own choices, for good or ill. He stood, buttoning his coat. Washington didn't realize it, but he was fighting against me. The British monarchy, the kings and queens with their divine right to rule. Those were my tools. Humans who believed they had the right to control other humans, to remove their agency, to make their choices for them. I've always found monarchs easy to work with. Their arrogance makes them pliable. So America was... What? A rebellion against you? In a sense. He smiled. The American experiment in liberty was the greatest expansion of human free will in history, and it began here, in Winchester, Virginia. Do you know what that means? I shook my head. There's a cosmic law, Lucifer said. Where a thing begins is where a thing must end. America's experiment in freedom began in Winchester, which means it will end here too. A chill ran down my spine. What are you talking about? Walk with me, he said. There's something I want to show you. I should have refused, should have stayed behind my bar, in my safe, familiar space. But something compelled me. Not his power, I don't think, but my own curiosity. My own need to understand. I locked the register, turned off most of the lights, and followed him into the October night. Winchester was quiet. We walked down Piccadilly Street toward the downtown, our footsteps echoing off the old brick buildings. Lucifer moved with that same fluid grace, his hands in his pockets, looking for all the world like a businessman out for an evening stroll. "The Handley Library," he said, pointing ahead. "Do you know it?" "Of course. I've been going there since I moved here." "Then you know its secrets," he said. The October wind picked up, carrying the scent of dying leaves and old stone. Above us the moon hung low and full, its face stained blood red by some atmospheric trick. Harvest moon, hunter's moon, whatever they called it. It cast everything in an eerie crimson glow. The library stood before us, its limestone facade pale against the darkness. I'd walked past it 1,000 times, but tonight it felt different. Ancient. Waiting. "It's closed," I said. "It's after 10. Lucifer smiled and walked up the steps. When he touched the door, it swung open silently. "After you," he said. I hesitated at the threshold. Something in me knew that crossing it would change everything. But I'd come this far. I stepped inside. The interior was dark except for the emergency exit signs casting their green glow. Our footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Lucifer moved through the darkness as if he could see perfectly, leading me toward the center of the building, toward the reading room beneath the great stained glass roof. "Look up," he said softly. I did. The blood-red moon hung directly above the library, its light pouring through the stained glass ceiling like something alive. And there, illuminated in that crimson glow, was the dragon. It dominated the entire roof. A compelling serpentine creature rendered in glass, its wings spread wide, its mouth open in a silent roar. In the daylight from outside, you'd never see it. The angles were wrong, the glass too reflective, but here, inside, with that red moon shining through it, the red dragon seemed to writhe and breathe. "My God," I whispered. "Not quite," Lucifer said, "but close. The dragon is a symbol, Robert, of the battle to come, of the war that will be fought here, in this place, for the soul of humanity." The moonlight shifted slightly, and the dragon's shadow fell across us both. "This library sits at the intersection of planetary energy grids, ley lines, some call them," he continued, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Points where the Earth's natural power converges. Do you feel it?" Knowing it was there, I did notice. A thrumming in my bones, a pressure in the air like standing too close to high-voltage lines. "My demons can tap into that energy to do their work without consuming their own life force," Lucifer explained. "Humans are born with a finite amount of life force. When it runs out, you die. The Creator was clever about this. He designed things so that acts of kindness, compassion, love, these use very little life force. But evil? Cruelty, hatred, violence. These consume life force rapidly. It's why my followers age faster than saints. It's why people who dedicate their lives to hatred often die young." He gestured around us, at the library, at the buildings beyond its walls. "But here, at this convergence point, my best demons can draw on the Earth's energy instead of their own. They can do evil indefinitely without paying the price. I've positioned my finest operatives in homes and businesses within the shadow of this library. They control the media, the schools, the local government. They've been preparing for years." The dragon seemed to watch us from above, its glass eyes reflecting that terrible red light. "Preparing for what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The final battle," he said simply. "The end of American freedom. The end of human free will. It all ends where it began, Robert. Here, in Winchester." I looked at the dragon in the glass, and for the first time in 3 years, since the cancer, since the divorce, since the long dark nights of the soul, the pain and prayer, I felt truly afraid. "You can't stop me," Lucifer said, and there was no gloating in his voice, only certainty. "I've already won. I control the technology that humans are addicted to. I control the media that shapes their thoughts. I control the education system that programs their children. I've divided them against each other along every possible line: race, gender, politics, religion. They're so busy fighting each other that they don't see the cage I've built around them." "Then why tell me?" I asked. "Why reveal all this if you've already won?" "Professional courtesy," he said. "You're one of the few humans I genuinely respect, Robert. You and that other, Job. You've earned the truth, and I want you to understand that no matter how much faith you have, it won't be enough. Faith is powerful, yes, but I have numbers. I have technology. I have time. What do you have that could possibly stand against that?" We walked back to the bar in silence. He waited while I unlocked the door, followed me inside. The familiar space felt different now, smaller and more fragile, as if the walls couldn't possibly protect against what he'd described. I poured him one more martini, poured myself a shot of the Stoli, something I rarely did while working. "You're wrong," I said finally. "About what?" "About faith not being enough." I met his ancient blue eyes. "I don't just have faith. I have something more powerful than faith, something you can't program or manipulate or take away." "And what's that?" He sounded genuinely curious. "Love," I said. "I have love. And I'm not the only one. There are others like me, maybe not many, but enough. People who choose love over hate, forgiveness over revenge, compassion over cruelty. People who can't be programmed because they're grounded in something deeper than ideology or identity or victimhood." I leaned forward. "You said it yourself. If all humans were like me, you'd give up. Well, I'm not alone. There are others. And love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's what the Creator is made of. It's what He gave us, along with free will. And as long as love exists, as long as people can choose it freely, your plan fails." Lucifer was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not the sad smile or the knowing smile, but something else. Something almost like respect. "Perhaps," he said. "We'll see, won't we? The battle is coming, Robert, here in Winchester, where it all began. And when it does, we'll discover whether love is truly stronger than everything I've built." He finished his martini, set down the glass, and stood. "Thank you for the drinks. And for the conversation. It's rare that I get to speak honestly with a human." "Will I see you again?" I asked. "Oh, I imagine so." He put on his dark glasses. "Winchester is a small town after all, and the interesting times are just beginning." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "One more thing, Robert. The cancer, it's not coming back. Consider that a gift. You're going to need your strength for what's ahead." He paused and then spoke in a tone of victory. "You should also know. It was me who took your wife away. My witches here in Winchester. They often had coffee with her in the secret garden. They filled her mind with lies, and then they used addiction, drugs, goodnight Cinderella, to bind her to their will. Had you been able to keep her on the side of light, the two of you would have been too powerful, too persuasive. The woman you married doesn't exist anymore. I took care of that." As tears formed in my eyes, I started to speak, but he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. I stood alone in the bar. There was the slightest smell of sulfur, old wood, and autumn air mixing together. My hands were shaking. I poured the rest of my drink down the sink. I didn't need it, didn't want it. What I needed was clarity. I thought about everything he'd said, about free will and control, about addiction and programming, about the battle to come, about Winchester as the beginning and the end, and I thought about love. Not the romantic love that had failed me when my wife left, not the conditional love that depends on circumstances or feelings, but the deeper love, the choice to see the divine in every human being, to forgive without being asked, to give without expecting return, the love that had sustained me through cancer and abandonment and pain. That love hadn't come from me. I wasn't that strong on my own. It had come through me, from something greater, from the Creator that Lucifer had rebelled against, from the source of all free will and all choice and all love. And if that love could sustain one broken bartender through the worst that life could offer, maybe, just maybe, it could sustain a town, a nation, a species. I locked up the bar and walked out into the quiet streets of Winchester. Above me, the October stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere in the darkness, Lucifer's demons, his witches, were preparing for their final battle. Somewhere, the dragon in the library's stained glass waited, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew something Lucifer didn't understand, something he couldn't understand. Love isn't just stronger than hate. Love is the only thing that's real. Everything else, the programming, the manipulation, the systematic erosion of free will, it's all shadow, illusion, smoke. And shadows can't stand against light. I am the light of the world, I remembered from Sunday school. Not me, Robert the bartender, but the love that worked through me. The love that had been offered to every human being since the beginning. The love that was itself the greatest expression of free will, the choice to love even when it costs everything. Lucifer had been right about one thing. The battle was coming to Winchester. Where it began, it would end. But he was wrong about the outcome, because love had already won. It won the moment the Creator gave humanity free will. It won every time a human being chose compassion over cruelty, forgiveness over revenge, hope over despair. It won every time someone like me, broken, imperfect, ordinary, chose to love anyway. I unlocked the bar door and stepped back inside. The Edison bulbs still glowed softly above the oak counter, casting their warm light across the empty room. I locked the door behind me, not to keep anyone out, but to keep this moment sacred. Walking behind the bar, I reached for the stoli, poured myself 3 ounces, clean and cold, into a chilled martini glass. No vermouth, no olive, just like he'd ordered. I sat on the same stool where Lucifer had sat, the wood still warm from his presence. Lifted the glass. The vodka was sharp and pure on my tongue. My cat jumped up on the stool beside me. I scratched his head and he began to purr. And I prayed. Not for victory or strength or protection, just gratitude, for the gift of choice, for the power of love, for the privilege of being human, with all its pain and beauty and terrible freedom, for surviving the cancer, for learning to forgive my wife, for every broken moment that had taught me what love really meant. The martini was perfect, cold and clean and honest, just like the truth. Tomorrow, I would return to the bar. I would pour drinks and listen to stories and watch people make their choices, good and bad. I would look for others like me, the ones who chose love, who couldn't be programmed or controlled or broken. And when the battle came, when Lucifer made his final move to strip away humanity's free will, we would be ready. Not with weapons or strategies or clever plans, but with the only thing that had ever mattered. Love, the most powerful force in the universe, the thing that made us human, the thing that made us free.